You've probably never stopped to think about how humans first spoke. It wasn't a moment. It was a slow, painful, and deeply human evolution. Before words, there was gesture. Before speech, there was sound. And before language, there was a desperate need to share survival, to warn, to connect. We don't know what those sounds were, but we can feel the power they carried. They were the seeds of what would become the most defining trait of our species. To understand how we spoke, we must first understand who we were. Not just as humans, but as beings who needed to survive, to remember, and to share. This is the story of the first words, and how they shaped the world we live in. So what exactly were we talking about? We're not just discussing words. We're trying to grasp how early humans made sense of the world before language as we know it existed. This is about the roots of communication. Gestures, sounds, expressions, the first steps toward the complex systems of meaning we take for granted today. We're not looking for the exact moment language began, but rather the process, the evolution of signals, symbols, and shared understanding. Every gesture, every sound, every shared look was a step forward, a building block in the construction of human communication. Understanding this helps us see ourselves not just as speakers of language, but as creators of meaning. In every era, in every way. Every time you speak, you continuing the conversation that began in the shadows of ancient caves. Those first words were not just sounds. They were the seeds of human connection, the roots of culture, and the foundation of everything we are today. Understanding how our ancestors communicated is like peering into the mirror of our own humanity. It's not just about the past. It's about understanding who we are, how we evolved, and why we are so compelled to share, to create, and to connect. You might not realize it, but the way you speak, the way you listen, and the way you interpret meaning, all of it is shaped by millions of years of evolution. That's why this history matters. It's the bedrock of our shared experience. Even in a world of constant noise, the first words remain silent and profound. They remind us that we are not just animals. We are thinkers, creators, and storytellers. And that, in itself, is something worth caring about. The first words were not words at all. They were sounds, breath, and rhythm. Echoes of a world before language, before meaning. They were the first steps toward a shared understanding of existence. As our ancestors gathered around fires, they learned to shape sound into something more than noise. It was a way to warm, to comfort, to connect. A bridge between individual thoughts and collective survival. The first words were not just spoken. They were sung, hummed, and echoed through the caves. They were the first songs of humanity, carrying the weight of memory and the promise of the future. As time passed, these sounds grew more complex, shaped by experience, by the need to share more, to teach, to remember. The first words were the foundation of what would become language. In the end, the first words were not just a tool, but a testament to our shared humanity. They were the first bridge between minds, the first step toward a collective consciousness. So imagine you're a little kid, maybe 3 years old, and you're trying to tell your mom you're hungry. You don't have words yet, but you point at the food and make a noise. That's how early humans started to talk, by using sounds and gestures to share ideas. They didn't have books or phones, but they had a brain that could think. So they made up sounds that meant things like water or danger. It was like giving the world a language so they could share thoughts and work together. At first, it was just sounds and gestures, but over time, they got better. They made more words, and they started to use them to tell stories, share ideas, and teach each other how to live. So, the first words weren't fancy or big. They were simple, shared, and full of meaning. And that's how humans began to think, learn, and build a world together. Before we could speak, we had to find a way to share our thoughts. The first step was learning how to read the world around us, to notice patterns, to understand that fire could warm us, or that the sky could change color. Our early ancestors didn't just exist in silence. They were constantly interacting with their environment, and through that interaction, they began to notice the connections between things, between sound, movement, and meaning. This observation was the foundation of all communication. It wasn't just about speaking or making sounds. It was about understanding the world and finding ways to share that understanding with others. Communication didn't start with words. It began with the recognition that others could feel, think, and respond, just like us. That realization was the first step in building a shared world. The setup was simple but profound. It required awareness, attention, and the willingness to connect. These were the seeds of language, the first words before any sound was ever made. Once the initial sound was made, it had to be understood. Early humans listened closely, their ears attuned to the subtle differences in tone and rhythm, trying to discern meaning from the chaos of sound. The brain processed these sounds, linking them to actions, objects, or emotions. This was the first step in creating a shared vocabulary, a way to translate experience into sound. Over time, these sounds were refined. Some became more complex, with pitch and inflection adding layers of meaning. This was the birth of language as a tool for survival and connection. The mechanism was simple, yet powerful. It required attention, repetition, and shared understanding. It was not just sound, but the bridge between thought and reality. The next leap wasn't just in sound, but in meaning. Early humans began to link sounds with specific things, not just random noises. This was the moment language took on a new kind of power. It became a tool to shape the world around them. With this connection, sounds became more than just echoes of the world. They became symbols. A single sound could represent an object, a feeling, or an idea. This was the birth of what we call symbolic communication. This shift allowed for more complex interactions. Instead of just reacting to the present moment, humans could now plan, warn, and teach. Language became a bridge between the past and the future. It was a quiet, but revolutionary change. The ability to carry meaning beyond what was seen or heard. This clever twist laid the groundwork for all the languages that would follow, giving early humans a powerful new way to think and act together. Beneath the surface of our language, there was a deep, ancient rhythm, a biological and cognitive structure that once guided our ancestors. This is not just about words, but about the way we think, feel, and connect with one another. The brain, with its intricate web of neurons, is a biological instrument. It's not just that we speak, it's that we are wired for communication, for meaning, for shared understanding. The science of this isn't about guessing what they said, but understanding how they thought. Their communication was built on patterns, sounds, and shared experience, a foundation that evolved into what we know today. So when we look at the first words, we're not just looking at language, we're looking at the origin of thought itself, the spark that ignited the human mind. Imagine a group of early humans standing around a fire, their eyes wide with curiosity and wonder. They are not speaking words yet, but their gestures are beginning to carry meaning. These gestures are like the first notes of a song, raw and unpolished, but filled with intention and rhythm. They are not language yet, but they are the foundation upon which it will be built. Think of language as a child learning to walk. Wobbly at first, but with each step it becomes more confident and precise. The same can be said for early human communication. It was not perfect, but it was enough. It was simple, but it was powerful. And in that simplicity, there was a kind of beauty. A beauty that allowed humans to connect across time and space. So, in the end, the first words were not words at all. They were actions, expressions, and shared experiences. They were the first steps towards something greater, something human. Comment this emoji if you made it to the end. Imagine a world without words, where memory was the only currency of history. Yet, from this void, a revolution of symbols began to take shape, birthing the first threads of human record-keeping. These marks were not just scratches, but the first attempts to capture the ephemeral. The sound of a voice, the memory of a hunt, the shape of a face, etched into stone for eternity. It was a moment of profound realization that by marking the world, we could begin to control it, to remember it, to pass it on. This was not just an act of creation, but of defiance against time itself, our first step into the realm of the written word. The birth of writing was not a sudden burst of brilliance, but a slow, deliberate unfolding, a quiet revolution in the human mind. And so, from the cold silence of the past, came the first whispers of a written world, simple, strange, and strangely powerful. We're talking about the moment when humans first realized they could capture the fleeting nature of thought, transforming ideas into something that could outlive the speaker. These early symbols weren't just scratches. They were the first steps toward a system that would eventually hold the weight of history, law, and knowledge. These marks were the first attempts to freeze time, to make the ephemeral permanent, and to give voice to the unspoken. It's not just about recording events. It's about building a shared understanding, a bridge between the present and the future. This is where memory became more than just a feeling. It became something that could be passed down, preserved, and transformed. The ability to record thoughts is more than a tool. It's a mirror to the human mind. Every mark on a clay tablet, every stroke on a papyrus, is a glimpse into the consciousness of those who came before us. When you read a book or send a text, you're continuing a tradition that has shaped the course of human history. Writing is the foundation of law, religion, science, and culture. Without writing, the great works of history would have been lost to time. The philosophies of Socrates, the laws of Hammurabi, the scientific discoveries of Newton, all depend on the ability to write. In a world increasingly shaped by data and information, understanding the origins of writing helps us see the roots of our modern digital age. It reminds us that every like or share is part of a long lineage of human expression. To care about the birth of writing is to care about the evolution of human thought. It's to recognize that our ability to communicate across time and space is one of our most profound achievements. The earliest known writing systems began in the Fertile Crescent, where the Sumerians etched symbols onto clay tablets. These symbols, called cuneiform, were not just letters, but complex logograms, representing ideas and sounds alike. This was a radical shift from mere symbols to a structured system of communication. As cities grew, so did the need for record-keeping. From trade agreements to temple accounts, writing became a tool of administration, preserving the flow of civilization. These tablets, buried in the earth, hold the first echoes of human thought and organization. From Mesopotamia, writing spread to Egypt, where hieroglyphs adorned temple walls and tombs. These pictorial scripts, though beautiful, were reserved for the elite, encoding the divine and the dead in a language of gods and kings. In the Indus Valley, a mysterious script emerged, yet to be fully deciphered. These symbols, found on seals and pottery, suggest a sophisticated society with a writing system that may have operated differently from its contemporaries, hinting at a unique cultural and administrative complexity. Across the globe, writing evolved independently, from the Mayan glyphs to the Chinese oracle bones. Each system reflected the values and needs of its people, yet all shared a common purpose: to preserve, communicate, and immortalize the human experience. Imagine you're in a cave holding a stick, and you want to tell someone about the hunt. You draw a big animal, then a stick, then a sun. That's how people started to write, with symbols that mean something. These symbols weren't just pictures. They were like secret codes. People used them to remember stories, count things, and even talk to others far away. At first, writing was just for a few people, like the ones who knew how to make these symbols. But over time, more and more people learned to use them. So, writing started as a way to remember and share things. It was a big step in human history, like giving our thoughts a home that could last forever. Before the first symbol was etched into clay or carved into stone, there was a human need to preserve, to communicate beyond the moment. This need was born from the rhythm of daily life, from the urgency of trade, the necessity of memory, and the desire to leave something behind. The first record keepers were not scribes or scholars, but ordinary people, farmers, traders, and leaders, who recognized the power of marking the world around them. They saw that a symbol could stand for a grain of wheat, a goat, or even a promise made in the heat of an argument. The tools they used were simple but effective. Reed pens, chisels, and the natural surfaces of stone and clay. These tools allowed them to create marks that could be read, copied, and preserved, bridging the gap between memory and permanence. Each symbol was not just a mark, but a concept, a way to represent ideas, quantities, and relationships. These early symbols were not yet language, but they were the first steps toward it, a shared code that could be understood across generations. This was the beginning of a transformation. From the moment a symbol was placed on a surface, it became part of a larger system, a way to document the world and ensure that nothing was lost to time. Once symbols were created, the next challenge was to make them last. Early humans etched these marks into clay, bone, or stone, materials that could withstand time and decay. The process required patience and precision. Each symbol had to be repeated with care, ensuring that the message could be read by others in the future. The material itself was not just a canvas. It was a repository of meaning. Each surface, whether clay or stone, held the weight of the message it carried. This physical act of recording was more than just writing. It was an act of memory, a way to preserve the voice of the past and speak to the future. By embedding meaning into durable materials, early humans transformed fleeting thought into something that could endure, setting the stage for the written word as we know it. The clever twist came when people realized that symbols could represent not just sounds, but ideas, actions, and even ownership. This shift allowed writing to move beyond mere record-keeping into a tool for communication and control. This new use of symbols made writing more powerful, as it could encode laws, trade agreements, and even religious beliefs, transforming it into a means of shaping and maintaining social order. By representing abstract concepts, these symbols allowed for a kind of intellectual leap, one that separated human societies from the natural world and enabled them to think in new, more complex ways. This was no longer just a system for counting or trade. It was a system for thinking, for organizing thought, and for preserving knowledge across generations. In this way, writing became not just a record of the past, but a tool for shaping the future, marking the moment when humanity began to truly think about itself and its place in the world. Beneath the surface of these symbols, a complex science of meaning and memory was being shaped. These markings weren't random. They were the earliest forms of syntax, encoded with intention and precision. The act of recording became a kind of mental exercise, a way to externalize thoughts and store them for later retrieval. It was as if the mind was being extended, made more durable through the material world. The materials used, clay, stone, bone, were not just mediums but constraints that shaped the very nature of expression. They forced a clarity of form, a precision that would evolve into the written word. This was the birth of a science that would outlive the people who created it. It was a silent revolution, one that redefined how knowledge could be preserved, shared, and transformed over time. Imagine a child learning to speak for the first time. They mimic sounds, repeat words, and gradually build a vocabulary. Writing is like that child, struggling to form its first words. But with each attempt, it gets closer to expressing the complexity of human thought. Just as a child's voice grows from simple sounds to full sentences, writing evolved from abstract symbols to structured systems. It was a slow, painful, and beautiful process of learning to communicate across time and space. Writing is not a sudden invention, but a gradual, incremental process, like a child learning to walk, stumbling, falling, and then taking a step forward. Each symbol is a word, each word is a thought, and each thought is a piece of history. So when we look at the earliest writing systems, we're not seeing a finished language, but a child's first attempts to speak. It's messy, it's imperfect, but it's the beginning of something profound. Humanity's ability to remember, to share, and to shape its own story. Comment this emoji if you made it to the end. You know, the world changed when a single idea could be copied, shared, and believed by millions. Imagine a time when knowledge was trapped in a few hands, locked in scrolls or bound in books that only the privileged could read. Then came a machine, simple in design, but profound in impact. It didn't just make books faster, it made ideas faster, and that changed everything. Before the press, knowledge was a privilege. After it, it became a power. The first printed books spread like wildfire, carrying the seeds of revolution, science, and democracy. This is not just a story of technology. It's a story of how information shaped the world, and how the world shaped information in return. So what exactly are we talking about? It's not just about ink and paper. It's about a machine that changed the course of human history. The printing press, invented by Johannes Gutenberg in the mid-15th century, was a revolutionary tool that made books more accessible than ever before. Before this invention, books were painstakingly copied by hand, and only the wealthy or religious institutions could afford them. The printing press changed all of that. It allowed for the mass production of texts, making knowledge more widely available. This was more than a technological breakthrough. It was a cultural and intellectual revolution. The printed word became a force for change, challenging established powers and spreading new ways of thinking across borders. The printing press didn't just spread knowledge. It changed how people thought, how they communicated, and how they saw the world. It was the first step toward a more informed, connected society. You might not think about it, but every time you read a book or scroll through news, you're standing on the shoulders of Gutenberg's invention. The printing press didn't just change how we share ideas. It shaped the very way we think. The spread of printed materials gave rise to public discourse, to the idea that knowledge belongs to everyone, not just to the elite or the church. It was the first step toward democracy of thought. Even today, the legacy of the printing press is alive. From the way we consume information to how we shape public opinion, we're still living in the world it helped create. The printed word didn't just spread knowledge. It changed the nature of knowledge itself. It made it accessible, permanent, and, most importantly, shared. So, yes, you might not think about it, but you should, because the world you live in, the way you think, and the way you engage with the world are all shaped by a single, quiet revolution in ink and paper. Before the printing press, knowledge was a rare and guarded treasure, copied by hand in dimly lit scriptoriums. Each book was a labor of months, passed from master to apprentice, a slow and sacred act of preservation. Then came Gutenberg, a German craftsman with a vision that would shake the world. He combined movable type with press technology, transforming the act of writing from ritual to revolution. The printing press became more than a tool. It was a catalyst for change. Ideas spread faster, debates ignited, and the foundations of modern science, politics, and culture began to take shape. The printed word democratized knowledge, breaking the chains of silence and opening the floodgates of human thought. It was not just a machine. It was the birth of a new world. Imagine you have a story you want to share. Before the printing press, you had to copy it by hand, one letter at a time. That took forever, and mistakes were easy. Then came a big machine that could make many copies quickly. It was like magic. The same story could go to many people at once. This machine changed everything. It helped spread knowledge and made learning more fun and fair for everyone. So, the printing press was like a superpower for stories. It let them fly far and wide. And that's how knowledge started to grow. Before the press could begin, the type had to be arranged. Each letter, carved by hand, was placed into a frame, like a puzzle waiting to be solved. Once the frame was filled, it was locked in place. The ink was then applied to the surface, a ritual as precise as it was essential to the process. The paper, folded and stacked, was then placed on top of the frame, ready for the press. This was where the true weight of the process began. With a steady hand, the press was activated. The weight of the platen pressed down, transferring the ink design onto the paper with unrelenting precision. Each press was a delicate balance of force and control. The sound of the press was a quiet revolution, the first step in a long journey toward the spread of knowledge. The first step was setting the type, but the real magic happens when the press is activated. The operator places the inked form onto the printing plate, a flat surface that will hold the impression. With a steady motion, the press handle is pulled down, applying pressure to the forme in the paper. This mechanical force transfers the ink from the type to the paper, creating the printed impression. The press is then released, and the paper is carefully lifted, revealing the crisp, clear text. Each impression is a physical manifestation of the ideas being shared across time and space. This simple yet powerful mechanism transforms static letters into moving ideas, allowing knowledge to escape the confines of the scribe's hand and reach the hands of many. Every press stroke was a step toward a more connected world, where ideas could travel faster, farther, and more widely than ever before. Now, the real genius of the printing press is in the way it handles the movable type. The individual letters are arranged in a grid, each one a tiny puzzle piece waiting to be placed. The printer uses a tool called a composing stick to pick up the letters, arranging them in the correct order to form words and lines of text. It's like building with letters, one by one. Once the entire page is composed, it's locked into a form, a metal frame that holds the arrangement of type. This is where the magic of the press begins. The form is then placed into the printing press, where ink is applied to the raised surface of the type, and then pressed onto paper. The result is a perfectly aligned line of text. This method, though painstaking, allowed for the mass production of books. Each page was a carefully constructed piece of history, waiting to be shared with the world. At the heart of it all was a simple yet revolutionary mechanism, the movable type. Each letter, cast in metal and etched with precision, was a tiny revolution in itself, a tiny step toward a world where knowledge could be shared with uncanny speed and clarity. The press itself was a marvel of engineering, a combination of wood, iron, and human labor. It transformed the act of copying into a process that could replicate entire books in hours, not lifetimes. And then there was the paper, thin, fragile, yet strong in its purpose. Made from rags, tree bark, and even fishnets, it was a material that carried the weight of thought and the promise of change. This was not just technology. It was a shift in the very fabric of human thought. The press didn't just print words. It printed ideas, and with them, the seeds of a new era. The science of printing was more than mechanics. It was the quiet, relentless engine of human progress, turning the weight of the world into something lighter, something more bearable. Imagine a world where a single message, once shared, can now ripple across the globe in an instant. The printing press did not just copy text. It multiplied thought, making it possible for ideas to travel faster than the wind. Before the press, knowledge was like a candle, bright but fragile, limited in reach, and vulnerable to being snuffed out by ignorance or force. It wasn't the press itself that changed the world. It was the way it allowed ideas to multiply, spread, and take root in the minds of many, rather than just a few. The printing press was not a perfect invention, but it was a revolutionary one. It was a tool, a mirror, and a bridge, one that connected minds across time and space. In the end, the press didn't just spread words. It spread the power of thought, and that is the most dangerous and the most beautiful thing of all. Comment this emoji if you made it to the end. You wake up to a world that speaks to you, not through words, but through data. Every click, every swipe, every search is a conversation with machines that understand you better than you understand yourself. The internet has become a second language, one that evolved not through centuries of conversations, but through the rapid, relentless pulse of code and connection. We speak to algorithms, and they speak back to us. The lines between human and machine, creator and created, have blurred into something new, something strange. This is not just a change in how we communicate. It's a revolution in what it means to be human in a world that is no longer just ours to control. We're talking about how language is no longer just something we speak or write. It's becoming something we code, something we train, something we shape with algorithms that learn from us. Every time we search, post, or comment, we're feeding data into systems that are learning to understand, predict, and even generate language in ways we barely grasp. The internet has made us all writers, but AI is turning us into curators of meaning, shaping what we say and how we say it in ways we may not even realize. We're not just users of language anymore. We're co-creators of a new linguistic ecosystem, one that's as complex and evolving as the technology that powers it. The question isn't just what language is becoming. It's what we choose to do with it, and how it will shape the way we think, connect, and exist in this new digital age. You might not notice it, but every time you type a message or search for something, you're shaping the future of communication. Language isn't just what you say, it's what you help build. AI doesn't just mirror our language. It amplifies it, distorts it, and sometimes even replaces it. The words we use today will determine how tomorrow's machines understand us. The more we rely on digital tools to interpret our thoughts, the more we risk losing touch with the subtleties of human expression, nuance, metaphor, and the weight of silence. Language is not just a tool. It's a mirror of our society, our values, and our priorities. What we choose to say and how we say it shapes the world we live in. You might not realize it, but your words are part of a vast, invisible conversation, one that is being recorded, analyzed, and used to shape the future of human interaction. The first computers were as big as rooms, humming with the rhythm of vacuum tubes and the scent of ozone. They spoke in binary, a language of ones and zeros, and their voices were silent, but their influence was loud. As the internet took root in the 90s, language began to shift. People started to type faster, write more, and communicate across vast distances. The web became a place where language was both created and consumed in real time. Then came the rise of social media, a digital agora where language became more casual, fragmented, and fast-moving. Hashtags, emojis, and slang transformed how we express ourselves in an era of constant connection. AI began as a tool for processing language, but it quickly became a mirror of our own. It learned from our texts, our tweets, our posts, and in doing so, it began to shape the very language we use, both in its outputs and in our expectations. Now, we stand at the intersection of human language and machine intelligence, where every word we type is both a reflection of who we are and a step toward the next evolution of communication itself. Imagine you're playing with blocks, but instead of building towers, you're building words. Every time you say a word, it's like adding a new block to a giant tower that's growing all around you. Now, instead of your hands, it's your voice. Every time you talk, you're not just saying something. You're adding to a big, ever-growing story that everyone can hear. The internet is like that tower, built by everyone, growing all the time, and holding all the words we've ever said. It's a place where ideas live, even when we're not around to say them. AI is like a super smart friend who can understand your words and help you build even bigger, more amazing towers. It doesn't just listen. It helps you say things you didn't even know you wanted to say. So language isn't just about talking. It's about building, sharing, and connecting. And now, with AI and the internet, we're all building together in a way that's never been possible before. Before any word is typed, there is a quiet hum of infrastructure. Data centers, miles below the surface, house the silent engines of the internet. Each server is a brain, connected to others in a vast neural network, waiting for the first spark of human input to awaken its purpose. Behind the scenes, a network of satellites, fiber optic cables, and wireless towers ensures that no signal is lost, no voice is unheard. This is the foundation of our digital world, an invisible, ever-growing structure that supports everything from the simplest chat to the most complex AI model. It's not just about speed or connectivity. It's about trust, reliability, and the seamless flow of information that makes language itself feel almost alive. Once the data is gathered, it's transformed into a digital language, text, numbers, and symbols that machines can process. This translation is the first step in making human communication understandable to artificial intelligence. The next step is normalization, standardizing the input so that variations in spelling, grammar, or phrasing don't confuse the system. It's like teaching a child to read by using the same book every time. Then comes the parsing process, where the system breaks down the input into its smallest meaningful parts: words, phrases, and grammatical structures. It's like dissecting a sentence to understand its meaning. After parsing, the system builds a semantic representation, mapping words to their meanings and relationships. This is where context and nuance begin to take shape in the machine's understanding. Finally, the system prepares the output, whether it's a response, a translation, or a suggestion. This step bridges the gap between human language and machine logic, creating a seamless flow of communication. The clever twist comes when the algorithm doesn't just repeat what it knows, but begins to recombine elements in ways that surprise even its creators. It's like a child learning to speak by repeating words, then suddenly creating sentences that make sense. This recombination is powered by vast datasets and hidden layers of logic, where patterns are not just recognized but reimagined. The AI doesn't just mirror the past, it invents variations of it. This ability to simulate is what makes AI both powerful and unpredictable. It's not just about replication. It's about generating new forms of expression that are both familiar and foreign. The clever twist is that this process is not entirely transparent. We don't see the layers of logic, the hidden probabilities, or the subtle biases that shape the output. It's a black box of sorts, but one that feels alive. In this way, the AI becomes not just a tool, but a collaborator. A kind of digital muse that challenges us to think differently about language, meaning, and the nature of creativity itself. Behind every AI model is a vast, silent architecture of data and computation, a digital lattice of words and meaning that hums beneath our conversations. These systems process millions of interactions every second, learning from the way we speak, the way we write, and the way we fail to understand each other. The science is not just about code. It's about the way meaning is built, broken, and rebuilt in the spaces between letters and silence. In this quiet hum of algorithms, we find both the promise and the peril of language in the age of AI, an ever-growing, ever-changing mirror of ourselves. The future of language is not just what we say. It's what we allow to be said, and how we shape the machines that learn to understand. Imagine the internet as a vast, ever-growing library, where every book is written by someone, and every book is also being rewritten by everyone else. AI is like a tireless librarian who can read every book, understand every word, and even predict what the next sentence might be. The internet isn't just a tool. It's a mirror, reflecting back the language we use, the way we think, and the way we change. In this mirror, we don't just see the world. We see ourselves evolving, adapting, and redefining what it means to communicate. So in the age of AI and the internet, language is not dying. It's transforming. And in that transformation, we find both wonder and warning. Comment this emoji if you made it to the end.